Oops, is there anybody on the telephone? Hello? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Chris, can you help him?
Yeah, we're gonna stand behind wherever they are. She lost her eye.
Good morning.
This is her mother. She was in the hospital for, and thank God she survived. Yeah, we can go ahead and move on down the school.
Is that right?
This brother here is in, so now
All right.
and this is the veteran of the Iraq war. You understand now, well, I tell you what, you find out, and this is, she lost a significant other, this is their child, he was 53 years old. Her nephew was 40 years old,
And he passed.
he passed. So we can come on down this, here. Jared? You understand, you can stand right inside wherever they are.
How old is she?
Okay, let's get close to you. Okay, she lost her 80-year-old.
Good morning. Several weeks ago, I held a press conference here with victim of Legionnaires in Harlem and announced that National Action Network was going to work with attorney Ben Crump and his legal team to seek some kind of justice and some kind of dealing with the value of those lives. Since that press conference, 4 people have died. Many others, including this 6-year-old young lady's father, an Iraq veteran, said it was worse than Iraq than what he's seen here. So I wanted to have this press conference today to express my outrage on the silence and neglect of dealing with is clearly an outrageous and atrocious occurrence in the Harlem community. It is not lost on me that all of these victims so far are from or work in Harlem. And last I checked, this kind of disease, Legionnaires, is not a segregated disease. So we have a segregated situation where we find a company that did not register their cooling facility with the city on time and has been able to continue to play games with justice for these families. For me, it is a civil rights issue. For me, it is a community-targeted issue. And the city of New York and others ought to join us in demanding justice for these families in the Harlem community. Is it not strange that we're now dealing with about 45 people that are saying that they have been injured or have been affected by this, and they all work or live in the Harlem community? So is it all right because it's Harlem? Is it fine and no emergency because it's our community? If this was in another community, it would not be tolerated. The culprits would be brought into court and made to deal immediately what happened. And we're not going to see Harlem marginalized, and we're not going to see these families marginalized and the deceased marginalized. So the reason I've called this conference and asked some of the loved ones of the deceased and some of those that's been affected, so we can demonstrate clearly this is not a passing story. This is something that is as extremely important to the Harlem community and therefore the city. If they can get away with it here, they can get away with it elsewhere. Everybody needs to understand the seriousness of this. Can you imagine if this was in a wealthy community of a different color, and you had people dying and being diagnosed later. We're up to 45, I understand now. The outrage that we'd be hearing from the highest level of government in this state, if not country. But because there is those in our community, it seems like it is no big deal. Well, we're going to make it a big deal at National Action Network, and we're going to continue to make it a big deal. How do you explain to this young girl who grows up without a daddy what happened and why nobody spoke up? How do you explain to these that have suffered? So clearly, history should not say that there was silence when this outrage and outbreak happened, and that we do not believe that the disease was segregated. We believe that it was a community that still suffers from double standards when we have health outbreaks and the cause behind it. I want to bring on our attorney, I call him, and now everybody calls him, the Attorney General of Black America, Attorney Ben Crump.
Thank you so much, Reverend Al. I just want to first thank Reverend Al Sharpton and National Action Network on behalf of not just our legal team, but all of our clients who are just lost, and the House of Justice being a refuge where they can come and they can be heard. So thank you, as I have done privately but publicly, Reverend Al, for your leadership. I, along with Attorney Jared Scotto and Attorney Elena Woke of the Rights in Luxembourg law firm and Attorney Nabiha Shear of the Ben Crump law firm, we have the honor of representing 35 citizens from Harlem who have been affected and impacted by this Legionnaires epidemic. See, they don't want to call it an epidemic, Reverend Al. They continue to come up with ways to try to sweep it under the rug, try to just cover up some of the salient facts and points that are germane to the lives and the well-being of these citizens in Harlem, New York. And we represent 4 of the death victims out of the 7 that they have acknowledged, but Attorney Scotto and Attorney Walker, our legal team, believe, Reverend Al, that that number may be as great as 20 members in the Harlem community that died from this Legionnaires disease outbreak. And you're going to hear from some of our clients today, their heartfelt articulation of what they went through before they were finally told by health department officials that it was Legionnaires that claimed the life of your loved one. How they came up with everything imaginable other than calling it what it was. They try to say, oh, her father had a heart condition. He had diabetes. But that ain't what killed him. You're going to hear from Ms. Platt, and when they woke up, he was doing just fine and so forth. It wasn't until these symptoms started occurring. That's what took him out. Don't try to keep the truth from his child. That is not right. You're going to hear, they talked about her 40-year-old nephew. They didn't want to call it Legionnaires. They said pneumonia. They talked about Miss Bryant's aunt. They said, well, she had dementia. We don't really know what it is. They are doctors. They know how to diagnose Legionnaires. They we're not wanting to tell people for a reason, and that's not right. We have to get to the truth. We have to have transparency so we can not only have justice, but we can have trust. And so that's why we're filing our third lawsuit today on behalf of the citizens that we represent, as well as we are filing 4 wrongful death notices of claim for the citizens who lost loved ones to this epidemic. And we are calling it an epidemic because, as Reverend Al Sharpton said, if this affected another part of the city more affluent, man, it would be major news. Everybody would be talking about the impact it had on the lives that were taken unnecessarily and unjustifiably. And it should be no different for Harlem. Because, as my mentor said, this is a civil rights issue. The right to breathe is the most urgent civil rights issue. The right to be able to extend life is an urgent civil rights issue. And the right for you to know what claimed the life of your loved one is a civil rights issue. At this time, before you hear from some of these families, you're going to hear from my great co-counsel, and I really say that because, Rev, they stay up, we be up at midnight working on this to dot I's and cross T's. And so Attorney Jared Scotto from Whites and Luxembourg is going to come and talk a little bit about our claims and our lawsuit, and then you're going to hear from some of the families here that are representing their loved ones. Attorney Scotto.
Thank you very much, Attorney Crump. Reverend Al. I'd like to thank the National Action Network for calling this press conference. I'd like to thank Attorney Crump and his team for their support. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Ilana Wolk and Avelino Garcia, Felicia Unger from Whites and Luxembourg for all their hard work on behalf of our clients. Last Friday, we filed a third lawsuit on behalf of another construction worker who was sickened at the laboratory construction project adjacent to Harlem Hospital. We hope to file a fourth lawsuit on behalf of another construction worker by the end of this week. Our team has been working very hard. We've filed 17 notices of claim against the city, including several wrongful death claims. We demand that the City of New York, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, as well as New York City Health and Hospitals and Skanska USA be transparent and forthcoming in the discovery process as we begin and continue to litigate these lawsuits on behalf of these very deserving families from here in Harlem. The cooling towers at the top of Harlem Hospital and the adjacent construction site were found to be the source of this outbreak and epidemic in Harlem in 2025. The cooling tower that was put on top of that construction site, overseen by Skanska USA, went online in May of this year. The city found out during their investigation that that cooling tower was never registered with the Department of Buildings or the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene as the law requires. So as this outbreak became known on July 25th, and the Department of Health was conducting tests on the tops of buildings and in cooling towers throughout Harlem, they didn't even know to test the one on the top of the tower of that construction site because that tower had never been registered. And the Department of Health can't test what they don't know about. Last week, we were present for a Committee of Health meeting in the City Council chamber. There's been extensive investigation that's been done by the city. We look forward to being able to see those documents on behalf of our clients and to make all of these situations known so everyone can know and understand the facts of what happened here. Legionnaires is a preventable outbreak. Those cooling towers are designed to radiate heat and dissipate heat as part of the air conditioner systems in these large buildings. Legionellas is a predictable and foreseeable harm if those cooling towers aren't tested and cleaned on a regular basis. And when we found out that there was a cooling tower that was not even registered, when the law required it to be registered, we really want to know what else wasn't done. What else should have been done? We continue to investigate on behalf of all of the citizens of Harlem that continue to call us every day. Please continue to reach out. We are ready to answer your questions, and we're here to help everybody that needs help. We understand, as part of public health in big cities, when there are epidemics, certain numbers, such as confirmed cases, which the city right now acknowledges at 140, may be underreported. The number of deaths may also be underreported. And we're calling on the city to be transparent about the number of deaths from pneumonia and other related illnesses that occurred in Harlem from the beginning of the outbreak on July 25th through the end of the declared outbreak on July 29th. How many people died of pneumonia in the middle of New York City in the summer? Not a time that you would expect large numbers of people to be diagnosed with that illness. So please, if you or any of your loved ones were sickened, hospitalized, had to go to the emergency room, reach out. We want you to be heard, and we want your voices to be heard, and we want you to be counted amongst those who were diagnosed so that nobody is left behind. Thank you.
Let me say this as we prepare to hear from some of the victims and surviving relatives of victims, that I think that as we are now very close, 5 weeks, 6 weeks away from a mayoral contest or a mayoral election, I'm calling on every mayoral candidate to deal with this issue in Harlem. No candidate running for mayor should be able to have laryngitis when you have this kind of breakout and epidemic in the Harlem community. To ask for our vote and ignore that people are dying here and that people had not registered these cooling towers with the city is an absolute issue that anyone that wants to be mayor or continue to be mayor should address, and address it based on the community. Don't tell me what you will do when we have something here that is happening that is not even addressed in the mayoral race. This is as much an issue as anything else that we're talking about.
Thank you so much for your leadership, Reverend Al. And again, I cannot underscore how important it is that the National Action Network was there for these families when others were not. And I sincerely thank you, Rev, because I think about our law firm and so forth, people not knowing who to turn to, but they knew Harlem residents can always turn to the National Action Network, and that's so important. I don't take that lightly at all. And just to underscore one point that Attorney Scott said, this was just preventable. It's just so preventable. Yeah, I do understand that, right? After they had the Bronx outbreak, they then passed codes and ordinance that said, you know, what you're going to have to do for these cooling towers, you have to do 3 visual tests every week. That's just looking at it. And then they said every, I think 30 days you had to do a dip slide test where you put the pole in. And then they said every 90 days you had to do a water culture test. And because they said we can't have people dying from Legionnaires in the middle of the hot, long summer. It was that simple. And I'm still just dumbfounded how everybody else in New York had everything checked and nobody died of Legionnaires. But in Harlem, New York, everything happens here? Nah, this is a civil rights issue. This is a civil rights issue. And because it is about the civil rights of our community and our children, the first person you're going to hear from is Lakeisha Plotton. And she has her daughter, her 6-year-old daughter, Brooke Scott, here with her, who lost her father as a result of this Legionnaires disease outbreak. And so she's going to speak to you from the heart. So Miss Lakeisha Plotton and Brooke Scott.
Brooke, you can stand over here with us. And with Mommy.
Good morning. I just want to say that this hurts really bad because my daughter won't be able to spend the time that she was spending and do the things that she was doing with her dad because her dad was taken from us. This was not a natural cause of death. This is devastating, and I had to continuously ask about what's going on with him, and I wasn't getting any answers. And then it was just pneumonia, and it was just they just walked away from me. It was like no answers, and I had to go behind the doctors' backs and go back to the hospital and try to get answers and try to get him tested. And it's devastating because he walked out the door in an ambulance and never came back, and that's traumatizing for my child. So she needs justice. My daughter needs to understand why her dad is not here anymore.
And when did you find out it was Legionnaires? How long?
It took a month for them to tell us that it was Legionnaires, and the health department called us, but they refused to give us anything in writing. They just sent me a text message with information how to get in contact with the investigator, and that was it.
And this is a month later.
A month later.
Well, you're not alone, and you have a whole village standing with you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And the next person you'll hear from briefly is going to be Miss Gloria Cooley, and her daughter June Cooley is here. And thank God she survived, but she was in a hospital and in rehab for over a month after being diagnosed with Legionnaires' disease.
Hi, good morning. This is my mom, and I'm sorry if I get emotional. But when I brought my mom to the hospital, at that time, I couldn't get in the ambulance, so I had to come 5 minutes later after she was admitted, only to be told I can't go see her. And I'm trying to explain to them, my mom is 82 years old. I just called the ambulance, she's here. Oh, well, you can't go in there, you have to wait. So I waited an hour or more. So by the time my mom kept telling me, where's my daughter, that's when they came looking for me. When I go see my mom, she already seen doctors, and then they come back at me, well, is this how I said, my mom was up, she walked, she did her own groceries. This woman laying here who can't move, who can't talk, who can't breathe, that's not my mom. There's something wrong. And then they later came to, oh, she has pneumonia. Thank God for press conferences, because that's when the Legionnaire got into my head, because I spoke to another person whose mom was in a hospital in the emergency room, and she said, oh yeah, my mom has Legionnaire, and she had the same exact symptoms. So now I'm asking them, did you test my mom for Legionnaires? And I got no response. Oh, she has pneumonia. I said, that's not what I'm asking you, docs. Did you test her for that? And I had to fight and fight and fight to get my mom tested. Meanwhile, they're asking me, well, if she doesn't survive, do you want her resuscitated? Do you want her to be intubated? So I'm dealing with all these things, and I'm like, but help me understand what's going on. And they just They felt blocked. I felt helpless. I didn't know where to go, who to talk to, because I'm looking at you as all the professionals, but you're not giving me the answers. And yet you just kept telling me, oh, she has pneumonia, but we're treating it aggressively. Well, what does that mean, sir? And then they said, well, we can't test her for right now because she came to another hospital. And because she came from a hospital that has antibiotics, there is no way that Legionnaire is going to show up now. They tested her like 2 weeks later, and guess what? Legionnaire was in her system still, after being filled with antibiotics. So sorry,
No, no. Thank you for,
I'm sorry.
thank you. No, no. Thank you for being persistent.
Because, my mom, I'm looking at her like doing end-of-life stuff, and no one can tell me what's wrong. No one can say why she can't walk, why she can't talk. And they keep looking at me like dismissing me. Like, well, no, we can't do that. So, but I was persistent because I said, something ain't right here.
Something ain't right.
Something ain't right here. Okay, sorry.
No, no. Thank you, Ms. Cooley. Thank you, Ms. Cooley. Okay. Now, you're right, Ms. Cooley. Something ain't right. And that's why we filed these wrongful death claims, because this Harlem Legionnaires disease outbreak is an epidemic. And they don't want to say it, but we're going to say the truth. I don't know how many people got to die before they call it an epidemic, but we know it ain't right. The next person you'll hear from is Mr. N. Avant, who's a military veteran who fought for our country, and we need to honor what they fought for, and that is respecting all citizens equally. Mr. N. Avant, can you tell about stuff?
Good afternoon. My name is Ian Avant. But I served in Iraq and also Egypt, patrolling the Gaza Strip. But still, this is one of the scariest moments in my life. When I went to the hospital, they kept telling me all my organs starting to fail. I thought I had pneumonia because I could barely breathe. But when I got to the hospital, they said it's not just that you can't breathe, it's that all your organs are starting to fail. I never had a heart problem in my life, but my heart, I had congestive heart failure. I had chronic kidney disease, all of a sudden. And I was scared. The doctors didn't know what to do. Luckily, somebody did a urinalysis and found that it was a bacteria, and they started treating it, and things started turning around for me then. But up until that point, I was dying. My family would come to the hospital. My mom came up from North Carolina, and when they walked in the hospital and seen me, they thought I was dead too. I didn't eat for 4 or 5 days. My time in the hospital was still horrible. They still treated me like crap there. It was just one of the worst times in my life, one of the most traumatic times in my life. Even now, as I go back to work and I walk to the train, I still got past the hospital. I still get feelings like I'm gonna die when I pass the hospital. And I don't want to go to work, but I don't have no choice. So I just gotta do what I gotta do and try to get some therapy, mental therapy. Even though this is a physical ailment, the mental part of this is real too.
And let me say, Reverend Al, Mr. Avant, to make it clear, he was in the hospital, all his organs were failing, his kidneys, they thought heart failure, everything was failing. They called his family thinking he wasn't going to make it. And then finally, they did the urinalysis test, Attorney Scott, and that's when they said he's positive for Legionnaire's disease. and then they started to treat it aggressively, and they saved him. How many people did they not test for Legionnaire's disease that could have been saved? And so it's just a blessing that you're here, and thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you.
I think just one more person we have, or two more. If you all want to come, Miss Bryant. She lost her aunt.
Hi, good morning. August 3rd of 2025 is one of the most times that I'm never going to forget. My aunt, she went into the hospital July 30th and died August 3rd. She went to Harlem Hospital. She wasn't feeling well. She went to Harlem Hospital, and no one gave me no answers. So that she was sick or she had Legionnaires. It's just so devastating just to know that she went in and never came back home. She was transferred from Harlem Hospital to Metropolitan. The only thing they told me that there's no room here. They never told me anything else. They ruled out pneumonia. They said they're taking tests. That's all I kept hearing. Once she got to Metropolitan Hospital, they still didn't tell me anything. She was alert. Everything was fine. And next thing I know, Sunday, I get a call when she went into cardiac arrest, and she just died. When I got the call stating that of what happened, no one still couldn't tell me anything. As a little girl, I've always was told, you never question God. But for some reason, I had to have that conversation with God because something just wasn't right. This wasn't her, regardless if she had gotten sick, regardless of age or anything. This wasn't her. I got a call on my way to work from the health department over a week later stating that, I don't know if anyone told you, but we're calling since she died of Legionnaire. Did anyone tell you? I said, tell me. I'm standing on 125th Street waiting to go to work, and I just get a call. So my heart felt like it was coming out of my body just to hear that. So I knew, once again, I talked to God, and I said, I knew something wasn't right, because this wasn't like her, regardless. So right now, this is Mr. Crump, Mr. Sharpton, Jared, and everyone. Everything they are doing for us, and even the victims that's not here or haven't come forth, I think this is something that's very serious and should be addressed. Because even though we're in Harlem, yes, it's a small community when you say Harlem, but we are a big community, period. So this is not about money, this is not about fame, anything. This is about justice.
Amen.
And we cannot bring our loved ones back, and also the victims that are still here on the grace of God. It's the reason why we still here, they're still here, and the families are here to tell our story. So all I just have to say is we need justice, 'cause this is not fair.
We're praying for you and your family. The last person we'll hear from is Mr. Anthony Stokes, who, thank God, survived but was hospitalized for quite a long time.
Good morning, everybody. This was kind of difficult for me because I'm a person, I'm very active. And when I started getting the symptoms, I almost passed out. I fainted one time. And then the next day, I relaxed, and then my body was in a lot of pain. And I forced myself to get up, get dressed, and go to the hospital. When I went in there, because I heard about the Legionnaires, I was scared. So when I went, I was asking, do I have Legionnaires? Could y'all check me for Legionnaires? Because I got all the symptoms that y'all had reported that I have Legionnaires, so I wanted to get tested. And so when I was there, they started testing me. I stayed in the hospital for 5 days, and they told me I have pneumonia, but they wasn't trying to tell me first about the pneumonia. They was avoiding that altogether. And they said I also had bacteria in my kidneys. So, but like, I didn't go through what a lot of these people have went through, but I still went through a lot. It was too much for something they could have addressed a long time ago. I look at these people, I empathize for these people and what they're going through, and it's something that nobody should have to go through none of this if it's something that's addressable, if it's something that they could have fixed. This is egregious. Like, I look at this lady here, she lost her nephew, 40 years old, she lost her nephew. I'm 52, 40, I'm like, wow, it's too much, So I'm just thankful for Al Sharpton and Ben Crump and Jerry Scotto and Elena Woke. They fighting for us, and we have people here fighting for us, and I'm thankful. Thank you.
Before we take questions, let me repeat that this ought to be, all of the mayoral candidates and others ought to be addressing this. This is the second press conference we've had here. They all come here asking for support. I'm asking for support for these families that need justice. And let me say I'm thankful to Ben Crump, our Black America's Attorney General, and Scotto and the rest of the legal team. I'm thankful to Reverend Ron McHenry, who runs House of Justice here and Reverend Dr. Malcolm Bird, who pastors the historic Mother AME Zion Church here in Harlem and is our COO. And will be given, let me make it clear for the right-wing media that since the right wing is flapping their wings, National Action Network sees this as a civil rights issue. We hope they get justice. If they get $1 zillion, we don't get a dime, don't ask for a dime, nor do we get it from Ben Crump. We do this because this is what we do. I know that is foreign to people, but we do this because Ben Crump is standing right here. He will tell you, Ben Crump will tell you we have paid for funerals. We paid for George Floyd's funeral, other funerals, and they've got big settlements. We never even got reimbursed for that because this is what we do. So there's no vested interest in this for us financially, but it is community-wise. And we are not going to be quiet when we see people dying and misdiagnosed, and people get a phone call, oh, did you know it was so-and-so? They don't treat other people like that, and they're not going to get away with treating our people like that. Amen. Any questions? Yes. I think it's an issue of health neglect and in our community, and that they feel that they will not be held accountable. They don't take us seriously till we make them.
And what does justice look like, especially for little girls and fathers?
I think that justice first is to make sure you hold accountable all of the people that contributed to the death of her father, and then to try and make whole her life that clearly is going to change because her father's not there as one that would support her. But it's not just about finances, and certainly she should have every dime she can, that this company and the city and others that are possibly culpable should have. But the fact of the matter is the accountability is first. I think I heard her mother say, which was moving, is how do you explain to her what happened to her father? And the next question is, when you explain it, her next question is going to be, well, did anybody do anything about it?
Yep.
Last question, sir. We heard you talk about Skanska and, the fact that they can get their cooling tower registered. Can you just clarify for me, in outline terms, what the city got wrong?
Scott.
Thank you very much. Can you just please repeat the question?
Yeah, can you just clarify or outline for me what specifically the city got wrong?
Did you say city and Skanska or?
Well, I know you have the notices of claims, right, for notices of claim. If you could just clarify what, yeah.
Are you asking what we believe the city is responsible for and why we filed the notices of claim? Okay. The city owned 4 of the 10 buildings that had water towers that tested positive for Legionella bacteria after July 25th. And we believe as building owners, the city had a responsibility to make sure that those cooling towers were checked and cleaned. So that's the basis for that.
An additional question while we have you. You talk about the city's lack of transparency. Does that rise to something that can get some justice?
We believe that the lack of transparency is extremely disturbing. We want to get through that. We want to get answers as the beginning of getting justice.
I'll say this on that. Just remember, when bad things happen, people have a tendency to try to sweep it under the rug, want to not have to take account for it. Well, true leadership stands up to be held accountable, not only when we get things right, but also when we miss things. So as Reverend Al said, true leadership will address these issues and lead this community through this epidemic. And so the question is, will we see true leadership?
Do you think that the city actively tried to not test for Legionnaire's disease in the hospital?
I think that the city did not aggressively try to make sure that this was being tested. If you knew that there was a Legionnaire's disease that had broke out in Harlem, then why do you, even after that was out, as one of them said when they heard about Legionnaires, and then they said, well, test for that. Why did they have to ask for that? Why wasn't it automatically tested since it was already publicly said there was an outbreak?
I have a question. Just like when the COVID outbreak happened, everybody was being tested for COVID first, and then everything else
Right.
later. So why do you think the hospitals were like, A, not testing, as his question, and B, even when families tried to get an answer like what happened to their loved ones, was the hospital constantly trying to hide it, or there was
I think that it was somewhere between them hiding it and not taking the value of these lives and the health of these people seriously. And you're correct. When COVID broke out, the first thing they did was test you for COVID. When Legionnaire's disease broke out in Harlem, it seems that one of the last things they got to, and sometimes the victims had to diagnose themselves. It shows a lack of equal regard and respect for our health and our lives.
So we know this isn't the first Legionnaire's outbreak in Harlem in recent years. Are you finding any similarities between this and the outbreak in 2018?
Yeah, the similarities is neglect.
But any similarities with any contractors who were...
I think that, well, Scotto can answer that better than I can, or Ben Crump. But I think all of it is neglect. That's why you're in the House of Justice. And I think that they devalue us so that they think nobody's going to do anything about it. And that's why we keep doing what we're doing with Nan. This is the second press conference we had, and I haven't heard an affirmative answer from the city and from this construction company that would satisfy us not escalating.
Can you please repeat that question?
Yeah, so any similarities found between this outbreak and the one in 2018?
Do you mean the 2015 outbreak in the South Bronx?
The 2018 one, Sugar Hill Projects?
I mean, other than the city owning some of the buildings, we don't know yet. I mean, I think the big difference here is having a cooling tower on the top of the lab that was under construction, having been essentially a new cooling tower, because it was part of that new ground-up construction. So we don't know as of yet. It's something we'll find out during this litigation, if there were other parties that were responsible for maintaining or cleaning that particular cooling tower in the time from when it became operational in May to when the outbreak started in July.
I would simply respond to your question that it really begs the question, why didn't we learn lessons from the 2018 outbreak? I mean, how many times does this have to happen in Harlem before we say we're going to do the proper testing and we're going to follow the law? And maybe if they got it right in 2018, in 2025, we wouldn't have so many deaths to cause this epidemic to become a reality and affect real people. Real people.
Do you think the lack of testing for community members rises to medical malpractice?
Well, I'll say this, as Reverend Al says so eloquently, it's almost like disregard, disrespect. It's the same thing when black women are told when they complain of pain that it's not taken seriously by medical professionals. So we have to deal with the, subconscious bias of people every day. So I don't know if it rises to the level of medical malpractice, but it is certainly an issue for black people in America when our complaints aren't taken seriously by medical professionals.
Let me say this in closing. Thank you all for being here. I would say to you, to your question, that the attorneys would call it medical malpractice. I would call it medical no practice when it comes to black folks. Thank you very much.